All right, good morning, my fifth graders. Today we're going to learn how energy flows in a food web. But first, we're going to do a pretest because I want to know what you guys know. And what you guys don't know, we'll be learning about that today, okay? So don't worry if you guys don't know the answers to these right away. Just do the best that you can. Take about 30 seconds or so for each question. Go ahead and write the answer on a scratch piece of paper to the side, and then we'll go over the answers as soon as we're done with the test, okay? All right, so this is the first question. In a food chain, energy does not flow directly from. And again, it's okay if you don't know these terms. If you don't, just keep in mind like what you want to learn during this lesson today, okay? And when you're ready to move on to the next question, we can go, you can put your thumbs up. Okay, all right, we're gonna move on to the next question. So we're looking at a food web and organisms in a field, and it's asking what role do raccoons play in this food web? And again, thumbs up when you're ready to move on to the next question. Okay, and last one. This is giving some statements that describe the transfer of energy in a food web. You need to try to figure out which statement is correct. Okay, so let's talk about this question real quick. What answer did you guys get for this one?
I picked D for this one.
Okay.
And the reason why I picked D is because I saw that we started off with the cattails, which is the very bottom, and then it went to crickets, and then to the bigger animals, the shrews, and then the bigger animal, the hawk.
Okay, good. So it looks like you already can identify the food chains within the food web, so that's good. All right, let's look at this question. What did you guys do for this question? Which one did you get, Wendy?
I could be wrong. I picked prey.
Okay, and that's okay that you picked that, because is it that you don't know what a producer or a consumer or decomposer is?
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't know what they are.
That's okay. We're going to learn that today. So the raccoons are actually consumers, but we're going to learn why, and we're going to learn about the different roles that each one of those play. Okay, so I'm glad that we're going to be able to learn something that you don't know. And then this is the last question. Did you guys have any idea how to answer this question?
I guessed on this one and I picked B. I didn't know what it was.
Okay, well, you know what? That's okay.
I guess too.
That's okay. You know what we're going to do now is we're actually going to fill out a KWL chart. So I sent the link to you in the chat box. Go ahead and click on the link for the KWL chart. And I want you to put in two things that you, one or two things that you know about food webs or food chains, or the parts that animals play as far as eating. So could be herbivore, carnivore, or omnivore, if you know any of that. And then one or two things that you want to know. So you know from looking at the questions, there's a couple of things you didn't know, right? So put it down what you want to know. And then at the end, when we've learned today, we're gonna go back and put what we learned, okay? So click on that link for Padlet that I sent you. And I want you to go in there and I want you to click on this little plus sign and just take a minute to type in something that you know and then something that you want to know, okay? I'm gonna give you about a minute to do that. Were you guys able to access the link that I sent you? Okay, good. Okay, so far I want to know, I know that animals are involved in a food web. That's absolutely true. You have to have animals in a food web. And then we also know that plants are important. Plants are very, very important to a food web, and we'll talk about why. And we all want to know about what a decomposer is, a consumer, and what a producer is. So that's great. We're going to learn all of that today. So I'm so excited that we're going to be learning about that today. So let's get back to the presentation. So what is a food web? So a food web looks kind of confusing when you look at it, right? There's a lot of different animals and plants and everything that are involved in a food web. But think about a food web as a bunch of food chains linked together. So I want everybody to say food web and link your hands together like this. And the food webs are linked food chains together. So you've got a whole ecosystem of food chains all linked together, and then the energy flows through it, okay? So it shows, the food web shows the transfer of energy in the ecosystem. So what do you guys notice about the arrows in the food web? Can you tell which way the arrows are pointing or what the arrows mean? Any ideas?
The arrows are going up.
Yeah, so you've got arrows going up, but what about the animals that they're pointing to? So that the arrows are actually pointing to where the energy is flowing through to the food web. So this was actually a misconception that I had, because when I saw the arrows in a food web, I thought, oh, this means that this animal is eating this animal, but that's not it. It's actually the other way around. It's actually the energy that's in the mouse is flowing to the hog, you see? So the energy starts at the trees and the grass, and so it flows from the grass to the mouse and then to the hog. So the food web shows how all the animals and plants are linked together in the ecosystem and how the energy passes through them. And every part of the ecosystem serves an important role, because if you took anything out of that food web, it's really going to have an impact on something else in the food web, because everything is connected to something else. And we'll look at the roles that each one of those animals play as we go through this, okay? So you guys have learned about food chains in second grade, third grade. You've learned about food chains before. What can you tell as a difference between a food chain and a food web? Can you tell if there's some of the major differences between them?
In the food chain, oh, go ahead. In the food chain, there's only one path. There's not a lot of arrows.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Did you have something else to add on to that, Wendy?
I was just gonna say, it's like you said, that in the food web, they're just transferring their energy.
Yeah.
And in the food chain, they're actually consuming each other.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, in both of them, they're transferring energy, but yeah, you've got different animals that consume each other in both, yeah. So where does the energy come from in a food web? All of the energy in the food web comes from the sun. So everybody say solar energy. You go like this, solar energy. And so all of the energy comes from the sun. So it comes from the sun, and then it goes to the plants or the producers, and then the plants use that energy from the sun to make energy with a process called photosynthesis. And we're not going to really go into photosynthesis into depth. That would be a completely different lesson. But you just need to know that the plants use that sun to make the energy. And that's where the energy in the food web comes from. All of the energy in the food web comes from the sun. If you don't have the sun, you don't have a food web. You don't have people that are able to eat because of the energy that is provided. Okay, so so like I said, the plants transfer the energy, and then as the plants transfer the energy they transfer the energy to other organisms as they are consumed. So the plants get consumed by the one animal, and then one animal consumes another animal, and then that animal consumes that energy. So everything is all linked together. So producers, I know you guys wanted to know what producers are. So say producers. Producers.
Producers.
And producers are plants. The plants that make the energy, that fuel the food web, that feed everything in the food web. All of the energy that comes from the food web are produced by plants, which are producers. So producers, our sign is going to be like this. It's going to be like a plant growing up. That's our sign for producers. So everybody make that sign for producers. It's going to be your plant growing up, and it's going to be what provides all of the energy in the ecosystem. So producers are really, really awesome because they're the only thing in the food web that can make their own energy. They make all of the energy for everything in the food web. Everything in the food web can link back to a producer. So without producers, we would not be able to eat. We wouldn't be able to eat anything at all without plants because other animals rely on that, and other animals are eating other animals. So everything comes back to producers. They're the only ones who can make food for everybody. I could stay out in the sun all day, and I would never be able to make myself my own food. Plants are the only ones who can do that through the photosynthesis process. So yes, they're probably the most important part of the ecosystem, and a part of the food web is the producers or the plants, because they provide the food for everybody. And the consumers are the ones that consume. So for consumers, they consume and act like you're eating a big hamburger like this. So consumers, they cannot make their own energy. We're consumers, we can't make our own energy. So we have to get our energy by eating other organisms. So there's different types of consumers. A primary consumer is the animals that just eat the producers straight out. They don't have anything in between them. They just feed directly off of the plants for the producers. So in this picture, there's bunny rabbits that serve as your primary consumers, but there's all different kinds of primary consumers. And then you've got, which are herbivores. And then you have secondary consumers that eat the primary consumers. And then you have the tertiary consumers that are predators and carnivores that eat other carnivores. So you've got all these different animals interacting within the consumers. And if you notice, what do you notice about that pyramid though? Does it look like it's the same amount of energy that's being passed on? No? Does it look like the same amount of energy on the bottom as on the top?
No, the triangle is getting smaller.
That's right, the triangle is getting smaller. Every time energy is consumed, so every time it passes on from producer to primary consumer, it loses energy each time. It's actually a significant amount of energy. Only about 10% of energy actually goes through to the next level, which is crazy. So there's a lot of energy that's lost through the process of consumption. So you guys should already know this, but I just wanted to go over it again just to show you how they interact within the food web. So you've got the herbivores that eat only plants. You've got omnivores that eat both plants and meat. So these little trash bandits down there is what I call them. The raccoons, they'll eat whatever they can find. Then you've got the carnivores that only eat meat. And then you've got scavengers that just eat off of dead organisms. So those are some different types of consumers as well. Okay, so for decomposers, I know you guys wanted to know what decomposers are too. So decomposers break down or feed on the decaying matter. So everybody go break down. and make your little, like you're breaking a stick. So decomposers break down or feed on the decaying matter. So they're important because after they break down the decaying matter, they create these nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus and calcium, and that those nutrients are used for the soil so that the soil can produce better. So those nutrients and soils and everything are really those decomposers, I'm sorry, that create the nutrients for the soil are really, really important. And they break down the dead material, because without them, we can call them the cleaning crew, because without them, there'd just be trash everywhere. There'd be nothing to break down dead matter, and it would get really funky. Like, you think decomposers and bacteria and fungus are gross. Like, it would be really gross if they didn't exist. So some of the decomposers are bacteria, fungus, some worms. Those are all examples of decomposers that break down that dead material. So let's review our vocabulary terms again. So we've got our food web, and then we've got solar energy, and then producers, consumers, and decomposers. Okay, are there any questions on any of those at all? On what any of those are? We're good? Okay. What we're going to do now is I'm going to show you a food web, and I'm going to explain to you how the energy is flowing in the food web. And then I'm going to show you guys a food web, and then I want you to show me or tell me how the energy is flowing through that food. Okay. So in this food web, our producers are wild celery and woody vines, and they're being consumed by, the wild celery is being consumed by the grasshoppers and the gorillas and the civettes. And so that energy is passing from the gorilla, or the energy is passing from the celery to the grasshoppers, and then from the grasshoppers to the civettes. And then the okapis are consuming the woody vines, so they're the consumers. And then the leopards are consuming the okapis. So the leopards are actually a secondary consumer. But they can also eat civettes, and if they eat civettes, then they're a tertiary consumer. But mostly, I just want you to know what the main consumers and producers are. In this food web, it is missing decomposers. A lot of the food webs that you'll see when you're practicing for the STAR test may not have the decomposers in there. So this one is missing the decomposers. Okay, so now it's your guys' turn. I want you guys to look at this and think about it for 30 seconds or so. And then I want you guys to kind of tell me some of the different ways the energy flows through this, and maybe some of the different roles that the animals play. Okay? And give me a thumbs up when you're ready, or you can just go ahead and start talking if you want. You guys ready? Okay. All right, Sam, tell me what you know about the energy flowing in this food web.
So I know that the energy kind of starts at the plants at the bottom, which are the producers, so willows and the white spruces, and the energy is being moved to the snowshoe hare and the caterpillars because the arrow is connected to those two. And the caterpillar is also eaten by shrews and foxes. So they kind of go in order from the producers working its way up, transferring energy all the way to the lynx, red foxes, and red-tailed hawks.
Okay, good. What about you, Wendy? Do you notice anything different about the food web, or how the energy is flowing through there?
Now I notice the same thing. You start at the bottom with your plants, and then you follow the arrows to the corresponding animal, and you work your way up.
Okay, perfect. So what do you guys think would happen if the willows were taken away from the food web? How would that affect the food web? If those willow trees were taken away? Or you know what, if the white spruces were taken away?
The caterpillar wouldn't have anything to eat if it was gone.
You're right, the caterpillar, but you also have, the red fox that eats the caterpillar too. So the red fox wouldn't have as much food to eat either, right? And the shrews that eat the caterpillars wouldn't have caterpillars to eat, so they'd be affected too. The lynx, they'd have less food to eat because they also eat the snowshoe hares, so they would have that to eat, but they wouldn't have any shrews to eat. So yeah, it definitely affects the food web a lot when you take something away, doesn't it? Okay. So now we're going to make our own food web. So that's our activity today. We're going to make our own food web. So I want you guys to get out your hangers. And so you should start with, okay, you should just start with your hanger. And what you're going to do is get your construction paper. So if you have yellow, that's great. If you don't have yellow, and you want to use a different color, that's fine too. Or if you just have white paper that you want to color yellow, you can do that. So get out your paper. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make our sun. So you want to put your paper over your hanger to see how big your circle needs to be that goes in the middle. So on mine, you see it's just a little bit bigger than the middle of my hanger. But if it's a little bit smaller and it doesn't go down all the way, that's fine too, as long as you can tape it here on the top, okay? And yeah, if that's a good idea too. If you have something big and round that you can trace, you can pick that up and you can use that to trace the circle too. So that's another way that you could do it. And then once you have your circle for your sun cut out, the best way to tape it on your hanger is by flipping your hanger over and then taping it from the back. So you're going to put tape on the back like this, and then just tape the back. And then when you flip it over, it looks nice and clean on the front. So that's the best way to tape it. And And I'm keeping this screen up so that you guys can see. Once you cut out your animals, that you may be kind of lost on what animal connects to which one in the food web. So I'm going to keep this up for you as a guide, so you can go back and double check and make sure that you're connecting your producers and your consumers properly, okay? So that's why that screen is still up.
Ms. Sanchez, do we have to cut the arrows?
No, we're not, no, you don't need to cut the arrows because the strings are gonna serve as your arrows. And
Thank you.
yeah, if you wanted to go back and add arrows on later, you can. But that's why we have the strings that's showing you how everything's connected. All you need to cut out is the animals. And then you're gonna actually tell me which direction that energy is flowing. So that's why you don't need the arrows, because you're gonna tell me which direction that arrow is going. Are you guys done with your, the sun on the hanger? Yeah, okay. Now you can cut, I would start cutting out your producers first. So start by cutting out your grasses and your grains and your carrots. And those are gonna be the first things that you tie onto your food web. So on your food web, the first thing that you're gonna have tied to it is gonna be your carrots and your grasses and your greens. And you're gonna cut a hole in the top of it so that you can stick the string through, and then you can tie it to the top. Because they're the first ones that are getting energy from the sun. So you're always going to start with the producers on the top. And it says we've got 2 minutes left from our 40 minutes in the meeting. So if we do get disconnected, we'll just log right back on. But you guys can keep working on your web in the meantime. So you're going to tie it like this to the top, and you're going to have it connected to the top of your producer like this. Okay? And so you should have 3 producers on the top.
Can you show me your hangers?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So you're going to tie 1 string at the top, and then, sorry, and I kind of messed up because I didn't make sure mine were facing the right way. Oh, sorry, let me back it up. There we go. Can you see it better now? So you're going to tie 1 string at the top, and then you're going to have about 6 inches on the string, and then you're going to tie it right there. And you actually probably want to count how many connections you're going to have on your producers or on your consumers. So if you know that your grasses are going to connect to 2 different animals, then you're going to have 2 other holes, or 1 other hole that you can connect 2 strings to. Okay. Are you guys done with the producers, tying the producers on the top, or you're still working on that?
Almost